Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to be walking you through how I made these knit denim shorts using a French terry fabric from Serge Fabric Shop. I'm also going to be showing you how I altered the Simplicity 1444 pattern in the hopes that you can take any other knit short pattern and alter it to get a results like these. Okay, so when I started with the Simplicity 1444 pattern, this is basically what it looked like, plus a waistband and some cuff pieces. I went with view G, which was the low-waisted shorts, because the high-waisted shorts were actually the same as view G. They just had like a wider waistband, so I wanted actual high-waisted shorts, so that's where I started with this. These are really small, especially compared to my final pattern pieces, which are much larger, so you can see I made a lot of changes. When I tried these on, it was like they were made for someone with no butt whatsoever. And you can see the back piece is not that much higher in rise than the front piece. Well, if you have a butt, you need the back piece to be a lot bigger because you have a lot more area to go over. So these were very low-waisted. They had a very, very small inseam, and I just knew that there were a lot of changes I needed to make. The first change I needed to make was to make it for someone like they actually had a butt. So I did the slash and spread method. You can see I cut across the piece here, and then I simply rotated the top up a few inches. By making this rotation, I'm increasing the back crotch rise without actually changing the size of the side piece, which still needs to be able to connect to the side of the front piece in order to sew together nicely. So that was the first change I made. Then I went ahead and lengthened the inseam on both pieces. So I just traced the inseam downward by a few inches, and I just marked all along the pattern piece and traced out that new shape. I also raised the waist on both the front and the back piece by a few inches. It took me a couple tries, but I came up with this pattern piece. You have my back here and my front, and you can kind of actually see, I don't know if my camera's picking it up, but you can see the original traced piece on there and how much I increased it. It looks like I increased about 2 inches for the inseam and about 1.5 to 2 inches for the waist. And I tried these on and they were good, so then I started to make my pocket alterations. Converting a pair of shorts to the J pocket is actually really, really easy. The first thing I did was just to, when I tried on my muslin, I kind of marked where I wanted the pocket to be, but I traced the J shape that I wanted, and then I measured in, so away from the body of the shorts, I measured inwards my seam allowance. You can see on this piece, which is a pattern piece that I cut, this was the shape that I traced right here, and then I measured inward my seam allowance. Once you have this piece, I actually duplicated it onto another piece of paper. See, so when you have the short, you need to have something that's going to connect to the waistband and connect to the side. So what I actually wound up cutting was this rectangle. The rectangle matches perfectly the side seam and the waistband. Now it is mostly a square, so it just turned into a perfect rectangle, but if there was some weird shaped waist or weird shaped side piece, it would follow the curves of the pattern. So I made sure that this rectangle fit within the body of the shorts, because this is the back of the pocket bag. So you actually see this face of the rectangle underneath the pocket, and this is what the front of your shorts look like. You see this piece and you see these, and when you have a pair of jeans, this piece is that piece that has the jean material on the top and the pocket bag cotton on the bottom, because on a pair of jeans you wouldn't want, like a real pair of jeans, you wouldn't want like 4 or 5 layers of denim all where your pockets are, so they make it thinner with some pocket lining. With these knit shorts, the knit is much thinner than a heavy denim, so I just use the entire face fabric. So you have this, you'll see this upper part on the pocket, you have the top piece, and now the only thing you need to do is complete your pocket bag. I didn't even cut another pattern piece for this. All I did is when I'm tracing my pattern, and you can see all of the chalk around the edges from where I traced it, I traced the pocket bag twice. And on the second pocket bag tracing that I do, after I get the rectangle, I place my original pattern piece back on top of it, line up the top and the side, and I trace that J. And then what I have is, you know, pretend that's a curve and not an angled line. You have a piece that is most of the pocket bag, subtracting out the J, and you'll see how that all goes together. Lastly, again, I don't have pattern pieces for this. I don't like to have a ton of pattern pieces because I tend to lose them. So if I have pieces that are rectangles like waistbands and cuff pieces, I actually will just write on one of my pattern pieces the size of the rectangle I need to cut out. So you can have here, I say leg, and that means my leg cuff piece, 18 inches by 4 inches. And that is the length and width of the cuff pieces, which I obviously need to cut 2 of because there's going to be one for each leg. The waistband, it says 25 by 6, so that's 25 inches long by 6 inches tall. And that is the length and height of my waistband. I only need to cut 1 because it's the waistband. So altogether, there would be 6 pattern pieces, but I've condensed it down to 3 because for the pocket, you need 1 rectangle for the pocket bag and then 1 rectangle minus the curve. We already have the curve from our front shorts piece, then we have the back piece, and then we have, of course, the leg cuff and the waistband, which I just have written down on one of the pattern pieces. Alright, so here's all the pieces that we have. We have first a back piece, pretty simple. We have the front piece, so this will be the piece that goes against your body, and then the pocket will go on top of it. So there's that piece. I also have some cuffs, bottom cuffs, as well as a top waistband, and apologies, this fabric is pretty rolly on me. And then I have my back pockets, which I just copied from a pocket pattern I already had for a button-up shirt. The first step you need to take is to get the front of the shorts behaving as a singular piece of fabric, even though it's actually 3 pieces of fabric. So you just take one of your front pieces, and you take one of the facings, and you lay them on top of each other, right sides facing, and then you'll just sew along the curve with whatever seam allowance you've added in your pattern. Because this is a knit, I'm going to be using a zigzag stitch to sew that curve. Alright, I have sewn along the curve with my seam allowance, and now you can flip it so that you have your facing. And now this next step that I'm doing, I did do it on my original shorts because the pair of shorts I saw online that I was inspired by had quite a lot of top stitching, but I'm definitely going to be doing it on these shorts because they're inspired by jeans, is that I'm going to top stitch along this curve with a double needle or a cover stitch machine if I had a cover stitch machine, with that sort of mustardy colored thread that you see on all jeans. You can actually buy this thread at most fabric stores. They'll have a jean section or a top stitching section where they'll have that perfect color of thread. So I'm going to use a double needle to give me a nice clean top stitched line around the edge of my pocket. Okay, this turned out awesome. I'm so excited about it. It really looks like a pair of jeans. Since I hate converting my machine to and from double needle, I usually try to do all of the double needle stuff at like the end of the project because it's usually what you're using for hems and collars and things like that. But because of the way these pockets are constructed, I had to do the top stitching here right away. So since the machine was already converted to double needle, I also went ahead and did the top of the back pockets. And then later on, once I'm doing all the rest of the double needle top stitching stuff, I can attach the back pockets to the back pieces. So my next step will be to construct the rest of the pocket bag so that we have a solid front piece. This requires a little bit of finagling, but basically I have here the back of my shorts. This is the facing, and I'm going to be placing the pocket right side down on top of the facing, lining it up. And remember, these are cut from the same rectangle, so they should fit together really nicely. And then I'm just going to sew the edges together. You only have to do this inside one towards the inside curve of the shorts and the bottom. You don't have to sew the side because this one will be trapped in the side seam once we construct the shorts together. Once I'm done sewing the pocket bag, I'm going to run just a stay stitch, so a straight loose stitch along the edge of the pocket and also down the side and down the top. And that will help me be able to treat this as a singular piece of fabric as it would be if I was making a pair of shorts without a pocket in them. So now you can see the pocket bag is sewn along the inside and bottom edges. And then all the white stitches are just the basting stitches that I did. They are just a 5 length straight stitch on the machine. They will all be removed later. They're just to hold all 3 pieces together so I can treat them as a single fabric. If you've ever wondered why when you buy a nice pair of pants the pockets are sewn shut, this is why. Because it makes it a lot easier to handle when you're sewing it. So now that the front pieces are complete, the next step is to sew the side seams and sew the front piece to the back piece. So I'll just lay my back piece on top and then I'm going to do a zigzag stitch along the side. Okay, now the side seams are sewn. And you can see we trapped the edge of the pocket bag in that side seam. So now we can go ahead and remove the basting stitch we ran along the side, but we're going to leave the other ones in there. Alright, so the basting stitch is removed. And now the next step will be to sew the front and the back together. So we will take our 2 front pieces and we're going to sew this seam. So the front pieces will lay on top of each other and have their seam sewn, and the same with the back pieces. Again, this whole time I'm using a zigzag stitch because this is a stretch material and we want these to stretch or else they will rip when we wear them. So now the front seam is sewn, the back seam is sewn, and the last step is to sew the crotch seam. So it just gets laid out and the back part of it gets sewn to the front part of it. You can see I've pressed my seams open so that they will run nicely under the needle of the sewing machine. And we have what is starting to look like a complete pair of shorts. This is the time to try them on and make sure that they fit, that your seams are curved correctly, that there's nothing really wonky. Because once we start sewing the waistbands on, it's going to start getting hard to change anything. The next step will be to take the waistband and the leg bands and just sew them up so that they're loops. Once that's done, I'm going to press them in half so that they will lay nicely, and then we will sew them to the jeans. We have a waistband sewn and pressed in half, and 2 cuffs sewn and pressed in half. First we're going to do the cuff, and how we're going to do that is take the cuff and actually insert it with the folded edge inside of the shorts. And you might be saying, what? That's backwards. When we pull the cuff down, the raw edges are going to be on the outside, but eventually we actually want the cuff to be folded up so it looks like we folded up the bottom of the shorts. So in order to hide the edges within that fold, we're going to put the cuff on the inside of the shorts. Like that, and then just zigzag around the edge. In order to do the waistband, we are going to open the waistband up and slide the shorts into it. It's going to require stretching the waistband a bit, and that's good. That's going to give us a nice tight fit at the end. And we're going to zigzag around the top like that, and then we will be able to fold the shorts up and over and top stitch the back piece down. And there you have it. We are all done sewing without the double needle. So you can see the cuffs here on the bottom, and you have all the extra fabric, so those will get turned up. We have the waistband up here, which will get folded under and also top stitched down. And then you can add any other top stitching details that you want to make them look like a real pair of jeans. You could top stitch in a fly, you could top stitch down the sides to look like a flat felled seam. You can do whatever you want. On the cuffs, I might actually top stitch the cuffs while they're unfolded, then stitch them up and bar tack it on the sides. You could do a bar tack around the pockets. That's also something you see on a real pair of jeans. And then I'm going to be sewing the back pockets on, also with the double needle. At this point though, you can remove the stay stitching from the pockets since it's all fully constructed. And there you go. You got pockets. All top stitched and completely done. I've got the top stitch along the top, and that is holding the waistband down over itself. I top stitched along the cuff, but I didn't top stitch it down, and then I did little bar tacks on the sides and on the inside in order to hold it. And then on the back, I top stitched the pockets down. These are not my best work. The machine kept stitching after I told it to stop, so I had to do them a couple times, but overall I'm very, very, very happy with these shorts. They look just like real jeans, except they're stretchy, so they're going to be really, really comfy to wear.